Okay. Welcome, everybody. I'm Jackie Morey. Welcome to this meeting, the virtual book club meeting, the 21st Century Legacy Letters virtual book club. And I am delighted today because I get to co-host this episode, this meeting with three distinguished co-hosts. They are Dr. Becky Slabaugh. Hi, Dr. Becky. Good to be with you. And we also have Tanisha Williams. Hi, Tanisha. It's good to be with you again. And Steve Garvin. Hi, Steve. It's great to be with you, sir.
Hi, good to be with
Awesome.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Well, today we are talking about chapters 5 and 6 of this incredible book, Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. It was #1 New York Times best-selling book for many, many weeks, if not months. I have to research that. And yes, she is a doctor. She has a PhD, so she is a doctor. And chapter 5 and 6 really blew me away. I must confess, though, that I didn't get to finish chapter 6. I'm almost done with it, but I went to the end, I skimmed through it, but I want to really read it pretty much word for word. So anyway, I really read all of chapter 5 and most of chapter 6, but I did not get to finish it. But all that to say is that there are so many takeaways, so many actionable ideas, but I want to give my co-hosts enough time. So I'm just going to talk really briefly about chapters 5 and 6. Chapter 5, the title of chapter 5 is Mind the Gap, Cultivating Change and Closing the Disengagement Divide. This alone was just really impacting to me because she talked about minding the gap from where our ideals are and then where we really are. In other words, what um, our ideal values are and what we're actually practicing. So she talks about strategy versus culture. And according to Peter Drucker, culture will always trump strategy anytime. Not that strategy is not important. Brene Brown makes sure that we understand that. But she says that who we are matters much more than what we do or what we plan to do. And then in chapter 5, she also talks about the disengagement divide. But one thing I want to also point out is that she asks 10 questions to discover what kind of culture you and I have. What is our culture in our family? What is our culture in our schools? What is our culture in our companies, the businesses that we run? What is our culture in the communities that we are a part of, in the communities that we lead? Like, for example, my co-host Steve Garvin is a Facebook community leader. He founded a group and he's the leader of that group. So what kind of culture do we have in the Facebook community? Also, Dr. Becky has her own Facebook community. And I believe Tanisha is going to have one if she doesn't already. And what kind of cultures do we really have in these communities, virtual communities or real communities, local communities? So these 10 questions to discover the culture and values of a group, family, or organization, I found extremely valuable. Here is what I want to just share. She says that strategy is the game plan, but culture is the way we do things around here. How do we do things around here? Do we promote shame-based cultures? Do we shame other people? Do we are we open to new ideas? Are we open to their input? Or do we make sure that we just do not have any kind of input from anybody and it's just a very closed culture, right? So anyway, I want to dive into chapter 6, but before I do, here's my actionable idea for chapter 5. I want to go over the 10 questions that can tell my husband and me, that can tell me and my husband how we're doing in our marriage and in our parenting. Let me just read a little bit of those questions and I'm going to transfer the platform to my dear friend Dr. Becky. So the questions in chapter 5, I'm just going to read them really, really briefly, just to give you an example. Number 1, what behaviors are rewarded and what behaviors are punished? Number 2, where and how are people actually spending their resources, time, money, and attention? 3, what rules and expectations are followed, enforced, and ignored? 4, do people feel safe and supported talking about how they feel and asking for what they need? 5, what are the sacred cows? Who is most likely to tip them? Who stands the cow's backup? 6, what stories are legend and what values do they convey? Number 7, what happens when someone fails? disappoints or makes a mistake. She points out that there is this lady in a company, and when she was always in the winners list, and just to have a winners and a losers list to me is just mind-bogglingly wrong. It is completely, to me, morally wrong. So she was always in the winners list, but she made one big mistake, and that cost the company the loss of a major client. So this was the first mistake that she made, and guess what happened? Now she was on top of the losers list, and that's how they motivated their people. To me, that is completely demotivating. So long story short, she resigned from that company because it was so humiliating for her to be in the winners list, and all of a sudden in 1 minute she was on the winners list, the next minute she was on the losers list. Okay, number 8, how is vulnerability or uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure perceived? Number 9, how prevalent are shame and blame, and how are they showing up? And number 10, what's the collective tolerance for discomfort? Is the discomfort of learning, trying new things, and giving and receiving feedback normalized? Or is there a high premium put on comfort? And how does that look? That's chapter 5, well, part of chapter 5. So that's my actionable idea. My husband and I are going out on a date tonight. So I think we're going to just go over the 10 questions. And just briefly, chapter 6, the title of chapter 6 is Disruptive Engagement, Daring to Rehumanize Education and Work. And I want to dig deeper into this maybe a little bit next week, because I read a little bit about it to my husband when we were on the way to his office this morning. And it just really, really intrigued him, because I said, the same things that happen in schools happen in organizations where people are not even given room for innovative ideas and creative ideas, and people who are creative, they're misjudged, or they're perceived as being, the not cool people, right? And so managers who feel threatened by creatives and innovators feel so threatened, and so they squelch them, they put them down, they even shame them, and they say that idea is not going to work, and then they might use it elsewhere, right? But in any case, that just really intrigued my husband. So he wants a copy of the book. So I'm going to get it for him. Anyway, here is one thing that I want to point out in chapter 6. She pointed out that we all need feedback. And we need feedback, but the type of feedback is very important in how we perceive, how we deliver feedback, how we give it, and how we receive it. So why do we lack feedback in schools, in organizations, in businesses, in huge companies, in whatever, in communities, in local organizations, in maybe charitable organizations? Why do we lack feedback? Number one, we're not comfortable with hard questions. Number two, we don't know how to give and receive feedback that moves people and processes forward. I didn't have space for the word forward, but there's the word forward after this. We don't know how to give and receive feedback that moves people and processes forward. So I want to just end with that. And I want to encourage you, if you haven't gotten the book, please get the book Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. This is transforming my life. It's transforming how I relate more, to our children, to my husband, and to colleagues, and so on. Because, we all need change. As it in this movie Rocky, the coach of Rocky Balboa said, "I got gaps, you got gaps, we all have gaps." So he didn't say so what, but I'm saying so what if we have gaps? That's why we need to grow. That's why we want to grow, right? So we want people who can give us feedback so that we can keep growing, keep improving, keep becoming more humble, more gentle, more courageous, more confident, whatever it is that we struggle with. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. I'm going to transfer now the platform to my dear friend, Dr. Becky. Hi, Dr. Becky. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I sure appreciate it. And it's been a fun experience reading Brene Brown's book. It's or Dr. Brene Brown. I'm going to dive in a bit on chapter 6. I thought for the 4 best strategies for building shame resilient organizations. I thought that was good because I've been involved in that, and I'll tell a story later on it. But supporting leaders who are willing to dare greatly and facilitate honest conversations, she talks about shame and cultivating a shame resilient culture. I love the whole thing what she's talked about on shame resilient culture, where we don't have to take it on, and actually she gives that's in different chapters, but let me give you the other three real quick. So facilitating a conscientious effort to see where shame might be functioning in the organizations, which is very important. I think that's just that awareness and how it might even be creeping into a way of how we engage coworkers and students. And number three is normalizing a critical shame resilient strategy. I thought that was good. Leaders and managers can cultivate engagement by helping people know what to expect. What are your common struggles? How are other people dealing with them? And then lastly, training all employees on the different levels or differences between shame and guilt, and teaching them how to give feedback. So to me, I've seen being in organizations and then being a clinical pastoral counselor and prophetic counsel, I'm always wanting feedback. It's like I send out letters. I say, let me know how things are going. It's really vital. But the key here is, like as she talks about and Jackie mentioned, is the how you present the feedback to help them to grow. So without feedback, there's not going to be any transformation change. So minding, so we're back to that. We can't talk to the people we're leading about their strengths and their opportunities for growth. We want to be talking to them about if we don't do that, then what happens is there's disengagement. They just kind of go away. And it's like, wow. To me, I love endorsing people. I love speaking into people's ministries or businesses because, it is shame resilient, or because so what if there's, like you were saying, gaps or whatever. We're here to grow and to learn and develop and be in the process. We're not looking for perfection. We're looking for the process and helping each other, is whether it be in the schools or organizations or ministries. Lastly, the good news is, these are all fixable problems. If an organization makes the creation of feedback culture a priority and a practice rather than a value, I think that's really gold right there. It can happen because people are desperate for feedback, and all we want to grow in. So people are desperate for it. They want it. So
Indeed. Thank you very much, Dr. Becky. I just love that you end with giving folks hope. There is hope, there's good news, and that's why there's this book that is helping really transform organizations. I have a really quick story. Brene Brown tells us about when she was a guest speaker in a conference where there were 50 CEOs from Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is the place where all the innovations, all the inventions in technology and mainly technology are really happening in the United States. And she asked, the other speaker was a gentleman, and she talks about how she asked this gentleman a question: what's the most significant barrier to creativity and innovation? And this gentleman, Kevin, thought for a minute, and he said, I'm going to summarize it. It's the fear of introducing an idea and being ridiculed, laughed at, and belittled. And if you're willing to subject yourself to that experience, and if you survive it, then it becomes the fear of failure and the fear of being wrong. People believe they're only as good as their ideas, and that their ideas can't seem too, quote unquote, out there, and they can't, quote unquote, not know everything. So it's really hard for companies to want innovation if they're afraid, if people are afraid to share their ideas. So anyway, I'd like to transfer the platform now to Tanisha Williams. Tanisha, how are you doing? Please share with us your takeaways, actionable ideas, and or stories, please.
All right, thank you. I would love to share. I'm in chapter 5, and she talks about minding the gap. Before I knew what that was going to be about, I knew what minding the gap is. I grew up in New York City, and when you take the subway, there's that big space between the train and the platform. And I've traveled all over the world, from London, Paris, Brazil, and I'm always looking for that gap. Whether I'm in Boston, DC, wherever there's a train, I'm looking for the gap. so I don't fall. Because I think as a kid, I must have almost like fell in the gap. So I'm kind of paranoid about the gap. So I knew what that phrase meant, but I didn't know how Brene Brown was going to put it into her chapter 5. Um, One of the things that stood out for me is aspirational values and practical values, the gap that's there, the space between our practical values and our aspirational. For example, if your parent teaches you about being honest and having integrity, then you see them stealing from the supermarket, that's a that's a practical value, and the aspirational is, so something's, there's a gap there. And one of the things I must commend my mother, she wasn't perfect, but if she said don't steal, don't lie, don't cheat, she didn't do those things. I've never saw her steal anything. She didn't cheat anyone. She was honest. So I remember as a kid saying, wow, she's saying it, so we have to do it. And because she did it, we did it. So to me, that's really good parenting. So a lot of things she said for us to do: be fair, don't judge others, by their skin color or whatever. She didn't do it, so as a result, we didn't do it. So she, I guess she must have knew about the gap. But yeah, so that really struck me. Now, one of the things that Brene Brown talks about is that we don't have to be perfect, just engage and committed to aligning values with action. So my takeaway, or rather my actionable idea, comes from Gandhi. He said it better than I ever could. He says, your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny. So he summed it up very nicely. And when I saw that, I'm like, that's the actionable idea. And Roy Disney said, it's not hard to make decisions when you know what your values are. So to me, it's like we have to know what our values are. We have to teach our children, our students, practical values. If I'm asking them to respect others, I have to respect them. They can't see me disrespecting another adult or disrespecting them. So if I'm saying, oh, we should respect each other, we should fill our buckets up. We talk about something called a bucket filler. A bucket filler is someone who makes you feel good about yourself. A bucket dipper is someone who takes away from that bucket and you feel bad about yourself. So if I'm teaching them about those type of values, I have to model that. I have to be a representative, I have to represent what I'm talking about. And I try to do it. And I tell them I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes. That's why we have erasers.
Love that, Tanisha. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. I really resonate with what you shared about, we need to, whatever values we're sharing, especially with our children, they are watching us. They are going to see more than they hear. They're going to see us. What are we modeling towards them? And like you, Tanisha, my parents modeled some values to me that were really very important. And one of those values was really honoring people. It didn't matter what socioeconomic background they were from. It didn't matter whether they were poor or millionaires. It did not matter. We honored them no matter what. And how they demonstrated that to us is, because my dad was in the military, so he knew a lot of people, and so did my mom, and we met a lot of people who were, more wealthier, I would say, in society. So we would meet them. We would have dinner with them, et cetera, et cetera. But then we would also go and visit people who were sick in the hospital. We would make it a point twice a year, I think mostly at Christmas time and another time of the year. We would visit people in the hospital. We would visit orphanages. We would visit people who were poor, and we would just bless them. And we would sing to them at Christmas time, and then we would give them gifts during the Christmas season. But to me, that was so important, and it really made an impression on me, because now I know that my parents' model, I don't have to just relate to people who are on this particular economic scale or socioeconomic scale, right? I can relate to people who are, no matter what their socioeconomic background is, no matter what culture they're from. So I just really appreciate what you shared, Tanisha. Very, very important. Anyway, by the way, before I turn over the platform to Steve Garvin, we are going to have a bonus at the end. So please stay until the very end, because I have a bonus for you. Steve, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today. And what are your takeaways or actionable ideas and or stories, please?
Sure, thank you. Um, so one of the things we've talked in the past about how I'm a creative person, and what I have a personal practice of creating art, but my focus in my business is actually helping businesses create wealth by being more creative and innovative and so forth. And later on in the book, and it's not in these two chapters, but Brene is quoting somebody and said that innovation is impossible without vulnerability. That, you know, to be creative and to create new things. It's kind of like the quote that you read earlier about I don't remember his name, but it was at a conference at an innovation conference, and he talked about, you know, that the block to innovation is having our ideas made fun of or belittled or whatever. And, you know, overcoming that and being willing to step out and to be different and to have radically different ideas really does take some courage. And the other part of that is, and I've got a story that I'll share in just a bit, but one of the things that Brene writes is that, and she says, the gap starts here. We can't give people what we don't have. Who we are matters immeasurably more than what we know or who we want to be. And when we're being at our most creative, our most innovative, it's when we're drawing upon the wealth that we already have. You know, it's when we take our passions and our interests and our past experience and so forth and draw upon that in order to create new ideas and new solutions to old problems. But again, we need to be willing to be vulnerable and step out on the platform in order to out there. And one of the things that a personal story is when I was working at a former site company, I did a project where I dramatically improved the process. It was a model that we used monthly in our accounting department. And when I got a hold of it, it was something that would take 2 days to calculate, and you had to run a bunch of databases and so forth. And I did a bunch of work and developed this new model for it and got it to work so that we could do it in 15 minutes. So go from 2 days to 15 minutes. And also it gave a whole lot more visibility as to what was going on within the business. Made a mistake. And there was one little mistake out of all this other stuff. And the only thing people could remember for a year and a half was the mistake that I made. Instead of, you know, totally how big of a change, you know, and how much it had improved as far as time and visibility and everything, it was that one mistake that I made. And of course I corrected it, but that was not good enough. And it really soured the experience. And in order for our individually, as parents, as business leaders, as whatever, in order for us to create the environment for our children, our peers, our employees, to be truly innovative and courageous, then we need to have that be an environment, the case. And it's not just on, you know, brainstorm, but that it's a constant environment where people are free to be vulnerable, free to have ideas, free to express, try out new things, and free to fail too. You know, when we're willing to fail, then we can try and grow and learn new things. One of the things that I refer to frequently is just the idea of, you know, when we watch little children learn how to do something, you know, when they're learning how to walk or when they're learning how to talk or write or whatever, that when they start out, you know, you just watch a little 2-year-old or 1.5-year-old as their 1-year-old. When they're just starting to walk, I mean, they fall down like all the time. But instead of saying, well, you know, you didn't, it's, wow, look at you go. I mean, that's just really cute. And oh, how cute, she fell down or whatever, you know, and we totally give space for that. But when we're doing other new things, whether we're starting a business or writing a new book or whatever, that that we so focused on it has to be right from the that it's and it doesn't ever happen that way, and so we stop progress so focused on controlling the outcome and making sure it's perfect. And when we let go of that, we can create so much more and such greater projects and products and books and whatever. But we need to be free to express ourselves and to try and to fail. And
Wow, incredible. Steve, thank you very much for sharing your experience with that company. And I want to apologize on behalf of that company and all the people who focused on that one mistake instead of thanking you and being so grateful for all of the things that you did. So I want to apologize on their behalf for them, because that is just wrong for them to do that and focus on the thing that you didn't do or the mistake you made, as opposed to all the wonderful things that you helped with them. So I really want to apologize on their behalf, Steve. So
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And one of the things that I really want to also help our kids is in being okay with failure, because we don't want them to be performance based, where their worth is dependent on how they perform. So one of the things that I learned from a recent interview I watched was the daughter, I mean, the owner of the company Spanx. It's a female, product, and she's a billionaire. She's a self-made billionaire. She's making billions right now. And you know what she shared in an interview that she did with somebody? They asked her, how are you able to, how is it that you're not afraid to fail and not afraid to make mistakes? She said, every day my dad would ask me and my brother what we failed in at school or wherever, and they would share their failures, and he would high five them, high five, which means that they were not going to be disciplined for failing, but they were being high fived and commended for trying or doing their best at that. So failure was totally okay in their home. And that's what I want also for our home, our culture here at home, where our kids are not afraid to try and make mistakes. So anyway, I want to give the final word. I want to give a chance for everybody to have the final word. So Dr. Becky, do you have any final thoughts, please, before we go?
Oh, well, since my subject was what caught me was on feedback and doing it in a positive, growing and developing way. And I thought a little bit about with Facebook, how how you click the likes. I mean, that's kind of a feedback in a way, or a thumbs up, So I like that in a way, for culture. But I think my takeaway, I thought of real briefly a story where I was in a executive assistant at a startup company in Bothell, Washington, and the boss was very nice to me, but he wasn't a good person. He was ashamed. He shamed everybody. It wasn't good. So when people were freaking out in the company, they'd come to me. And at that time, I was young and I didn't know how to deal with it. And instead of giving him feedback, I left. I couldn't deal with it. I wasn't ready. The good news is what I learned from that. Whenever I have a chance to speak truth, whenever I have a chance to give feedback, I'm on it. So that was my lesson, and this really coincided, Jackie, with that experience. So that's my takeaway.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Becky. And I want to apologize on behalf of, for that boss, because he mistreated you and he mistreated your colleagues and those who worked in that company. And I want to apologize on his behalf for the emotional angst, the hurt that he caused you and other people. So I want to apologize on his behalf, Dr. Becky.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Tanisha, I was reading here about the teachers, about how they were shamed in the Houston Chronicle. That was mind-boggling to me, because it didn't even explain the rest of the story, that was the highest bonus that this particular teacher could get. So anyway, I want to give you the final thought, the final word. What are your final thoughts? And just if you want to speak to that, that's fine. If not, that's fine. I just felt so I could relate to the teachers, and I know that you are a master teacher. You're a teacher of teachers. So whatever your final thoughts are, I would love to hear them, Tanisha.
Sure, thank you. My final thoughts do rest with chapter 6. One of the things that Brene Brown says, to reignite creativity, innovation, and learning, leaders must rehumanize education and work. And as a teacher, as I read that, one of the teachers said that they use shame in the classroom to control their class or something like that. And I was very sad to read it. Like, I guess tears came to my eye. And maybe they didn't know any better, and maybe by having the training with Brene Brown, they can, do better. But you would never use shame in the classroom. Maybe a year ago, a little boy had an accident in my class. He, went to the, I teach first grade, so things happen, and so I did not make a big deal. I just went to him and I said, it happens to everybody. And I said in front of the whole class, I said, it happened to me. It happened to me. So the little girl says, does it happen now? And I said, no, but it happened when I was little, when I was in kindergarten, maybe first grade. And I said, I hope it doesn't happen now. But yeah, so he felt better. He didn't get embarrassed, and no one teased him about that. And because I said, it happens to everybody. It happens to me. It'll happen, and the kids looked at me and they was like, yeah, they should, yeah, it does happen. And like I said, I was sad to read that some teachers, without maybe knowing any better, to try to control the classroom or whatever, because maybe that happened to them when they were in school, and that's how some teachers may have done that. So we got to break that cycle with the shame. So and as an educator, my colleagues, I really respect all teachers because we work very hard. And I think people just see, oh, you have the summers off, but some districts you don't get paid in the summer. Hello. And
Wow.
yeah, I don't get paid in the summertime. I'm on a 10-month contract, so I'm eating oodles of noodles and bowls of cereal.
I did
But
not
it's
know that.
yeah, and so it's like, but we still do work over the summer. We go to workshops to get better. We got to go back in our classrooms and unpack everything in August or whenever school starts. We work on the weekend. We work. I get to school at 6:45 in the morning, and I don't have to be there at 8:20. And I've been doing that for 15 years. And I do it because I care. We do. Some people stay to 8 o'clock at night, and we teach elementary school. It's not like it's high school or middle school, but we're there because we care and we love the kids. We want to give them our best. And I think that's the takeaway that I got from that. Giving our kids our best because we love them.
Wow, Tanisha, that is amazing. By the way, folks, it's Tanisha's last week for this particular book. So, Tanisha, thank you so very, very much. What an honor to be with you and co host this virtual book club meeting with you regarding this particular book. I want to honor you also as a teacher. Thank you. Thank you
Oh,
so
you're
much for.
welcome so much. And thank you for asking me. I enjoyed being a co-host with Dr. Becky and Steve. I'm going to miss you guys next week. Maybe I can watch it in the airport
There you go. There you
before I get on the
go.
plane. But thank you
That,
so much for asking. I really do appreciate it.
thank you. Thank you, Tanisha. And again, I want to honor you and all the teachers out there who are really working hours and hours on end. And I didn't even know that you didn't get paid in the summer, that some teachers don't get paid
No.
during the 2 months that you're off. So, wow, I salute you, Tanisha, and I honor you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And before we go, I want you to know that the bonus today is the Daring Greatly Leadership Manifesto. It is the last page on chapter 6, and it is dedicated to the CEOs and teachers, to the principals and the managers, to the politicians, community leaders, and decision makers. So it is not right now in the offer is up right now. You just click on the orange button that says, yes, I want this, and it'll take you to the page where Brene Brown gives you this manifesto for free. And it is the Daring Greatly Manifesto. And I'd love for you to download that as the bonus that I promised to you. So thank you so much, folks, for being with us today. I want to honor you with your time. Thank you very much. And again, we are going to finish this book up next week, chapter 7 and the final thoughts. And again, if you haven't gotten this book, powerful book, transformational book, and very practical and very actionable. There's so many actionable ideas that I've already taken away. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next week on the virtual book club meeting. Thanks, folks. Bless you. Bye.